Thank you. I don't have to do a long biography of Lenny because we've done that before. I met him several years back when he was in charge of the union, and I was running around trying to figure out where the Circle K kids were going to sit and a whole bunch of stuff. So, and then I've been with him how many years, I don't know, more than I can count, I think, taking tickets at the gate N. And so we are at N, aren't we?
Yep.
N. So that's been a lot of fun. But my best memory of Lenny is his tuna salad. He brought me a little container of it one time. It's the best in the world. So I asked for the recipe, and he said, well, you just throw a little of this in and a little of that in. You can go to the international section of the store and get a little of this and throw that in. And I went, okay. Lenny, when are you going to bring me that next box of tuna salad? Because I can't make it anymore. But anyway, Lenny's going to finish up his presentation that he started a while back, taking us back to New York and telling us about the street gangs, and not gangs, but I mean in the way you think, but you know how they entertained and the games that they played.
Yes, gangs. I'll try to finish this up and wrap this up, otherwise there'll be a third program that someone who is on the program committee will be happy to know that they can book me again. But we'll try to run through this. I appreciate Rodney's assistance with this. And for those of you who weren't here for the first installment, that installment is now on the web, on the Kiwanis site, and also on the Facebook page, so you can look it up and review everything again. So I'm not going to go over right from the beginning. But this is downtown, of course, Manhattan, where I was born. And just to give you a sense of where we left off, I am first generation American. My parents came from Europe. The Lady Liberty was, of course, a big influence in my life. Gave my father a chance to make a life here for his family. Grew up in Queens after I lived in Manhattan, and where we left off with the Spalding and the ball and the games was that the candy store, the local candy store, very similar to McCord's downtown, candy store had everything that we ever needed. Games, penny candy, Marvel comic books. We hung out there. That was the place where if we needed supplies to have fun, that's where we went. When we met people, that's where we went right after school. First place we stopped off on the way home, candy store. One thing that happened is that many of the New Yorkers at that time, they didn't have the wherewithal, at least people around my family and my friends, to do a lot of cruises and taking trips to Disney World and go with the families. The best thing to do was to go up just about an hour outside of New York City to the Catskill Mountains of New York. And the neat thing about it was that this Red Apple Rest, which is no longer there, served as the route for cars when cars and automobiles were popular. They used to go to Red Apple Rest, which was a place where you was stopped off, you go to the restroom, you have good food to sustain you for the rest of the trip. And this was, you knew you were outside of the city once you got to Red Apple Rest. And all the cars parked over there was really great. So Catskills was an interesting place because the Catskills had bungalow colonies. I don't know if anyone had bungalow colonies in Indiana. Anyone know what a bungalow colony is? Okay, so bungalow colonies are cabins, basically, sufficient with all kinds of, you have your dinette set or whatever, you had your kitchen, you had your bedroom, and a little area where you could sit. And families were able to go up to these bungalow colonies for the summer, and you'd rent it out for about $100 a month. The family could get away from the hot city because there was no air conditioning. And the fathers who would work in the city would then come up on the weekends and be able to get to the fresh air of the country and the mountains, a little cooler weather. No air conditioning there either, but at least you open up the windows and you had a nice breath of fresh air. These colonies, very much reminiscent of what I mentioned the last time, the shtetls, the small villages where people gathered together, and they became small little communities where people went back year after year. And the kids went to camp here. They had swimming pools, they had clubhouses, they had entertainment, they had bingo, they had all kinds of things. I was a counselor at a camp in a bungalow colony. And it was the first opportunity I had to save a life. When I got to camp, I decided I was going to take my 6 and 7-year-olds on a hike. And you're talking about a city boy who knew nothing about the country. And in my group of about 12 boys was 2 brothers who had Down syndrome. And all of a sudden, I'm in the lead of this line as we're going into the woods, and we get to this lake area, and there's an assistant counselor who was my assistant in the back, bringing up the rear. And all of a sudden I hear screams. And I hear screams, and what happened? I turn around and I find out these 2 Down syndrome boys were sinking in mud and quicksand. And I said, how in the world am I going to survive this thing? I said, what kind of smarts do I have? Growing up in the city, I never encountered anything like this. All of a sudden, I see this log. I got my assistant counselor to help me carry this log, lay it over the mud or the quicksand, and it stayed on top of it. I climbed on the log, and I dragged them out one by one. They were all covered in muck, and we went back to the home bungalow, and I was afraid that the parents were going to come and get me for putting them through this kind of torture. But these things influenced my life, and I said, I realized that I, as a person, had the ability to take matters into my own hand and take charge. This was my first inclination that I had the ability to be a leader of some sort. That I would rise up to the opportunity, and that someone was watching over me, and I would take care of things. So these are the houses, and it was very nice. Now, the one thing I want you to remember is that when we talk about this area, this was called the Borscht Belt. Did anyone ever hear of Borscht Belt? Okay. Borscht Belt was known for its hotels and bungalow colonies. Borscht because of famous beet drink and soup-like concoction that came from Russia and Poland and all over. And a lot of the Jewish comedians frequented the hotels in these areas. They had several hundred hotels and about 3,000 bungalow colonies. They weren't all Jewish. They had separate bungalow colonies. The Italians went to, Irish went to, whatever ethnic background you went to, that's the bungalow colony you went to. But everyone went to the Catskills. It was close by New York City. It was great. Kutcher's was a very famous hotel.
Can I answer? It is the third. Stop. Go ahead.
Yeah. Kutcher's was a very famous hotel, and there were 3 or 4 main ones: Kutcher's, Grossinger's, and Concord Hotel. Concord was the largest of them. In their dining hall, they fed 3,000 people. They had entertainment every night. Grossinger's was very famous. Jenny Grossinger was a hostess with the mostest. And a lot of these celebrities would go there. And this was the start of entering. All these hotels were going to have an influence on American life in terms of the comedians that came out of there. they found it very convenient. They would do an early show with Grossingers. They would go, after they finished their show, to do the hotel at Concord, and then they would do the hotel at the another hotel. And they would get in 3 shows a night, make a lot of money. Jerry Lewis had a hotel, it was called Brown's. And this was a very famous area. This was the premise for Dirty Dancing movie. And this has a lot of memories for me because this is where I learned about the hotel business. This is where I learned to take care of customers and schmooze them so I'd make bigger tips. This was all kinds of things that had a lot of meaning to me. My first kiss was with that.
The Catskill Mountains, but not in the summertime. Because in the summer there's an anti-Semite who works for the highway department. Every year on June 30th, he pulls out 300 orange rubber cones. They squeeze the Jews into one lane. They do nothing to the highway. Labor Day, they take the cones away.
Some 90 miles north of the George Washington Bridge lie the Catskill Mountains, alias the Borscht Belt.
People ask me, what is the history of the Catskill? What is its roots? And I answer, it is the third act of Fiddler on the Roof. Teddy wanted to leave the Lower East Side. Well, there were a lot of Teddies who felt that way.
For generations, this famous resort area has catered in every sense to the New York Jewish community.
There were very few places that were such a social epicenter at a particular time and place that will probably never be replicated again.
Forget Dirty Dancing. It dwarfs compared to the real excitement that was up here.
Your sports commentator drove up to New York's Catskill Mountains to look in on Wilton Chamberlain. He watches a bellhop, this 7'1", 17-year-old giant.
The list of comics out of the Catskill Mountains was huge. Danny Case, Jackie Mason.
Sid Caesar working in our band, Jerry Seinfeld, Bill Wise at Noir, Billy Crystal.
People are asking for all the amenities. Do you have an indoor pool? Do you have a golf course? Do you have this? They wanted everything. Even though I asked many people, do you play golf? No. Do you like swimming? No. But I like to know that you have it.
You need a monument to talk about a glorious history. We served hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people in 100 years.
Is it going to go to the next one?
No, I gotta get out.
Okay, so the interesting part of that, of course, is that they have 3 meals a day, lots of food. You can order 10 million entrees. We used to go there, because the college for me was in the city. We used to go there on break, and the next thing you know is that I see this empty table there, and they have shrimp cocktails on all the tables, and I said, let's sit at that one. Let's sit at that table with the shrimp cocktails, and there's no one there to eat it. So me and my friends, they went over to the shrimp cocktail, every empty table, and we had about 15 shrimp cocktails each. And you can order more, so there was no problem. But that's what they like. So just like when you go on a cruise and you can have food all the time, 24 hours, same thing at these hotels. They serve the purpose of that. Okay, I was a rebel. I wasn't a radical, but I was a rebel when I went to Brooklyn College. It was a time of protest, a time of sadness, a time of war. We all lived through it. This was Kent State Massacre. We had a march protesting, and we were also protesting the murder at Kent State by closing down universities throughout the country. Well, it so happens I majored in music at Brooklyn College, and music was the last department to close down. Every other department closed down. All the other universities closed down. This was the last department probably in the entire country that stayed open. So the students asked me again, maybe because I was president of the chorus, go and speak to the professors and get them to close down the department, otherwise it would be very embarrassing. So I went and I spoke to the professors and I said, well, we can't just close down the department. Beethoven and Bach are going to die. No one will remember them. I said, what are you talking about? I said, we went through World War I, World War II, and all these composers are still around, famous. They'll never die. Their music will never die. And they listened to me and they decided to close down the department. And it was at that point I realized again, I had a lot of power. People looked up to me to do things for them. This cap, I stayed with me all these years. It was the hat I wore in college. It has buttons and emblems. This was a Boy Scout emblem where I was state compass champ for state of New York. We went camping. Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts were a big part of my growing up life. After I graduated, I decided to go into teaching, which was my major in music education. When I teach others, I teach myself. This is, to me, one of the most famous quotes that meant a lot to me because I learned a lot from the students. And I taught in intermediate school and in junior high school. This is junior high school 285, Meyer 11 Junior High School. What was interesting about this school is that it taught me about discrimination. I was a teacher in a mostly African-American minority school. Kings Highway, you see the street going up and down. To the right was an all-white Italian Jewish area. And then where I was on the left, East Flatbush, was mostly black and Hispanic. And we had a spring concert, and it was the pet project of the superintendent of the district. And he was very proud that he was going to bring everyone together. So when I had my chorus get up to sing right before the intermission, they got up on stage onto the risers, and all of a sudden, everyone in the audience that wasn't related to the black kids on the stage started booing. And I was very upset. I said, we worked hard, worked like for everyone else. And I was looking at the faces of these kids having to witness and bear these boos and hisses and yells and catcalls. And I said, do me a favor, just stand still, stand like soldiers, let it bounce off of you. We're not singing, we work too hard until everyone is quiet. So what ended up happening is that they did that. Superintendent of schools comes up to the edge of the stage and said, Mr. Seidel, what are you doing? He said, why don't you start singing, everyone will be quiet. I said, no. I said, let everyone quiet down, give the students respect, and then we'll start singing. So he goes and turns around to the audience. He says, look, if you don't stop booing, we'll never get out of here because he's not going to sing. He's not going to get them sing. I said, these are the people who are in charge. I was very disillusioned. Following day, I was brought up on charges of inciting to riot. The union, teachers union, got me out of the mess because they realized it was just total nonsense. But it gave a very bad taste in terms of what I was up against. It was very idealistic. I wanted to help the kids. The white schools came on with beautiful new instruments. They had the money. It was part of the same district. All the money was going to the white schools. We had broken down instruments and everything, and that's what we had to work with. So I had to deal with that. It was very difficult for me. That was me. Yeah. That was my rock band. You can see the makeup of the group, and the white guy is me in the front. This was my homeroom class, and I had the opportunity to save the life of a second person. When the security guard came over to me and told me that one of the boys in my homeroom class was now threatened, his life was threatened by one of the gangs in the neighborhood, and he asked me if I could take him home so he didn't have to take the bus. And he said because if he ended up taking the bus, they were going to kill him. So I ended up taking him home, and as far as I know, he made it through. I had to do something to get out of teaching. I couldn't take it after 10 years. So I said, well, music was my major. I was going to go to a Broadway musical theater workshop, and I was going to start learning and trying to break into Broadway. Lenny Seidel was my teacher, my instructor. Well-known conductor and director of Broadway musicals, Carousel, Porgy and Bess, all of the old original musicals he was involved with. Learned a lot from him. King of Hearts was the musical I tried to write, and it turned out it was showcased on Broadway. It closed after 48 shows because someone else had the rights to it, and they did a lousy job with the musical. Lenny Seidel had confidence in me, said if you had done the music, everything would have been fine. And that's it. So I stopped doing Broadway and I went into commercials. Okay, Ron. So I composed this jingle.
You never had simply a cup like Lipton Cup.
Introducing new country style cutlassy. 4 new soups each with something extra, like country vegetables or big moonies. Thicker broth.
So creamy.
Even crouton.
Okay.
No.
No, that's all right. That's all right.
That enough?
Yeah, that's enough. They get the idea. They get the idea. Okay, so I made $2,500. The commercial was shown nationally and internationally for 6 years. That's all I made, $2,500. I said, I can't make a living like this. I decided to try something else. I interviewed in hotels and restaurants. They didn't want to know from me because I was overqualified with a degree in music. They didn't want, like, the fact that I was a teacher because I was too lazy, according to them, because teachers had all this time off. They had vacations, they had summers off, you know, and you have to work long hours in hotels, and they didn't like that. So I said, the only way I'm going to get out of teaching, the only way I'm going to break in is if I go back to school for hotel restaurant management, which is what I did. Ritz-Carlton was where I worked. Met a lot of celebrities there. Essex House was my second hotel, and it was the Essex House owners that transferred me to Chicago that got me to the Midwest. These are the people I met along the way. Betty Davis always had to have no tablecloth on her dining room table, only placemats. She had to wanted to see the beauty of the wood, and she wanted to make sure that the wood was protected somehow, so placemats were her thing. Frank Sinatra always had to have popcorn, so we had to always get him a popcorn machine and popcorn supplies. George Burns was the cause of the first person I ever fired in my life. I was a room service manager, and I told my staff, I said, people that come in here are celebrities. You have to respect their privacy, and you have to also not interfere. They're here to enjoy and do business or whatever, or just enjoy themselves. You're not to interfere in their lives. One of my room service waiters all of a sudden comes down after delivering food to George Burns' room. Comes down, and they had Polaroid cameras, remember? You can take the picture and print out the picture right away. Sure enough, what happened? He says, look, I have my picture with God. Because George Burns played Oh God. And I said, oh, let me see the picture. I said, didn't I say don't bother the celebrities? I said, that's it, don't come back. So, Richard Pryor, nervous, always on drugs. Lily Tomlin, great person. Well, one of the things that I tried to do was, are the people that you see on TV or in the movies like how you think they are in person? Are they nice? Are they friendly? Are they mean? Rude? Are they erudite? Lily Tomlin and Amira, very, very down to earth. Carol Burnett, just like she's on TV. Eva Gabor, when she found out that my mother came from Hungary, Eva Gabor, sister of Zsa Zsa Gabor, was on Green Mansions. Eva Gabor said, oh, honey, you're so handsome, I want to adopt you. I said, please. Eddie Albert was with her in the room, of course. They were part of that Green Mansions thing. did the entire cast of Dynasty. Diane Carroll, I don't know if you remember her. Beautiful black actress, the most incredibly glowing skin I've ever seen in my entire life. Flawless. So she had a standing order of 7 containers of 7 quarts of milk, whole milk, 8 bottles of Evian, the liter size, and she said, make sure that the room service cart has glasses and ice cubes on the cart so people think that I'm drinking this stuff, but I'm not drinking this stuff. I put it in my bath. Each bath cost ABC, which was the company that showed Dynasty, $200 every bath, just to get her skin looking nice. Jane Fonda is just like you would imagine. She was really bad. She was so mean, it was terrible. Dudley Moore was great. Donald Sutherland was the best tipper. Tom Bosley was horrible, very rude. Tom Selleck was always in his bathrobe. Itzhak Perlman, excellent guy. Interesting thing with Barbra Streisand and Warren Beatty, I almost lost my job because of them. I was running the restaurant, and Warren Beatty calls from his room. He said, do me a favor, you know where my regular table is? Barbra Streisand is joining me for dinner, and please seat her when she arrives at my table. Okay? So, she doesn't come in right away. Who comes in but Bo Bridges, who's Jeff Bridges' brother, and I recognize him. And I said, oh, Mr. Bridges, welcome to the restaurant. I said, are you here to meet Mr. Beatty? Which I shouldn't have made the connection. And he said, yes, and he put a smile on his face. So I sat him down at the table. Warren Beatty comes down, takes a look at his table, sees Bo Bridges sitting there, and he says, what is that going on? Why is he there? I said, well, I asked him if he's joining you. He said, yes. He said, well, I hate him. I told you to save the seat for Barbra Streisand, not for him. And I thought he was going to get me fired. And I said, well, look, there was another inside interior dining room. I said, I won't seat anyone there. I will sit you in that dining room, and you and Miss Streisand will have the entire dining room to yourself. And I got out of that mess because of that accommodation. Muhammad Ali was just wonderful. He took pictures, signed autographs with every staff member. These are things also, you probably don't have enough time, but I had videos to show you, and I'm going to give you things just a brief and wrap it up very quickly. We're not going to do it, Rodney. Rodney. Yeah. Yeah, we don't have time for the videos.
Of the Jewish American deli. But it was
Okay.
actually arrived in America much earlier than you might think we could be.
Okay, so I'm going to just flip through the slides now. The part of this that I wanted to show everyone was that there are many influences from New York City, from my culture, my heritage, that influence the life. Now, I can't take credit for all of this stuff because a lot of this came from Germany, came from Russia, came from all Eastern European countries, including Poland. But the thing is, it was the Jewish immigrants that made it popular in the United States. And this is the kosher pickle picked up by Heinz. They made it popular at the World's Fair. Bagels, nothing like New York bagels. If you go to New York, you have to stop into one of the bagel stores. The way they make it, they don't make it anywhere else in the country. It also has a lot to do with the water that they use, but also the process. Too bad you can't see it. Junior's Cheesecake, the most amazing cheesecakes. They got famous nationally on QVC. Words that influence the English language. Bagel, bupkis, drek, anyone hear anything like that? Okay. Kibbutz. There's a glitch. Klutz, if you're a klutz, you're clumsy. Kosher means it's legitimate, also is the food. Kvel is when you're with pride. Kvetch is if you're complaining. Mensch is very meaningful to me. It's a person who has a soul, who is a human being. Meshuggah is you're crazy, Nebish is, and Nash is a very common word now, but it's coming from the German Naschen, but it was made popular in America because of the Jews bringing and with the comedians. New, so new, let's get on with it. Oi, Shlemiel, Shlak, Shmata, Shmo, Joe Schmo, all these things. Schmooze, Schmear, Schlub, they liked Schmutz. And yes, Schmaltz. Schmaltz is fat. It's like the schmaltz was chicken fat, and they used to cook with that kind of thing. So, Yenta we know, Tuchis is the behind, and Spritz, also from the German Spritzen, but no one in the United States says Spritzen. No one uses the German word. They use the shortened version, which again was carried over this. So I just wanted to give you an idea briefly. Too bad we didn't have time for the videos. Maybe another time I can compile just videos and not speak. But the whole thing is that you realize how we have incorporated so much of the culture into our own everyday life that we get used to, and a lot of it had to do with Ed Sullivan and all these TV shows that brought these comedians into our homes across the United States, and it just became second nature. Just became second nature, and it influenced my life. It's a part of who I am, and you can't take it away from me. So, any questions, just briefly? If not, you can see me afterwards and I'll answer whatever questions you have. I appreciate the opportunity to share this with you.
Good job.